reason.
Welcome to the Rig on Wheels show featuring MVT, the show built for professional truck drivers. Bringing you the latest insights, hot jobs, and tips to keep you moving forward. Powered by Mesilla Valley Transportation, the leaders in safety, fuel efficiency, and innovation, with over 1,600 trucks on the road. Let's hit the road together. This is the Rig on Wheels show featuring MVT.
You all, today is going to be great. We got freight rates from Asia are spiking fast. And if you are not paying attention, your margins will pay the price. So shippers are flooding ports to dodge the tariffs. And ocean carriers are definitely cashing in. This isn't business as usual. It is the pressure cooker. So buckle up. We are going to break it down. We do have some exciting stuff to talk about because we got a 90-day tariff window happening. I am Kameel E, the owner and host of the Rig on Wheels show, the #1 truck driver recruitment show, proudly featuring MVT as always. I am joined by Pierson, Robert Pierson, his mom calls him, Vice President of Recruitment at Mesilla Valley Transportation. So each week we do bring you the latest industry news, hot topics, of course, hot jobs, tips for drivers, tips for recruiters, but we are definitely going to talk about some tariff business here. So, Pierson, we got some tariff stuff. Like, Trump literally was like, okay, I'm going to just tuck my tail between my legs, or however the saying goes, and I'm going to drop things down to 30. And then China said, I'm going to drop it down to 10, right? And they're going to give us a reprieve for like 90 days. So everybody's kind of rushing. And that's bringing rates up. We're having some exciting things going on. What is your take on that before we get into like what freight waves and transport topics there?
I know it's a big topic right now. I view it as somewhat meaningless. We still have, and what I mean, we still have the unknown that has not gone away. And the fact is you cannot create a trade deal in about 90 days on this large of scale. And there's a lot of things that we want from China. Quite frankly, we want them to respect intellectual property rights. That's not going to get solved very quickly. It's been one of the detriments as U.S. companies have done business over there, and they then turn around, steal the technology, and kick out the U.S. companies. We have most of the leverage in this. They depend on us more than we do them, and we depend on them a lot. So that's saying something. I see this being a bit of a short-term win, but we're still sitting with this 800-pound elephant in the room that's not been addressed as of yet. And so we'll see how quickly this can get addressed. The libertarian in me wants to see all countries come into it with 0% tariffs. You'd win, you'd lose some. We are always going to have a trade deficit with most countries. We are the largest capitalistic country in the world. We are that 800-pound gorilla in the room. We will always have a trade deficit with China because even though they have the 1 billion people, they don't make near as much money as we do. They do not have the same what we view as middle class. And when we view at the deterioration of the middle class in the U.S., trust me, China would long to have the problems that we have. So the fact is I am cautiously optimistic short term, but we still have that big decision to make. What does it look like 90 days from now? Richard Nixon disrupted the Bretton Woods program back in 1971 when he was very honest. He came to all the countries of the world and said, essentially, we're going to put America first, and we are going to look for unfair trade with every country here, and you guys are going to take it. And they did. And slowly over the years, that deteriorated. So what Trump's doing right now is not new.
No.
His math that he's using is definitely new. But what he's doing here is what Richard Nixon did in 1971, and it really led to some of the successes we had later on in the 80s. With that said, that's been deteriorated over the past 40 plus years. So I'm cautiously optimistic long term. I think it's good to have some of these resets with these countries, and countries like the UK and Brazil and Vietnam have already come to the table and said, we're going to take what you give us, because they kind of need to. Vietnam relies on us much more than China, even though they're next door. With that said, China's that big one that we need to work on here. And my fear is that it will take just Trump getting irritated about something, or Jinping Xi over in China getting frustrated, and this is going to go south. So we'll see what happens. I do think we will see a bit of a spike of freight on the West Coast, so I'm looking forward to it, because we'll talk a little bit about freight volumes. But we need to see what's going to happen 90 days from now. So just like when Trump said this, and I said, let's see into his presidency 6 months, we have a 90-day reprieve, but let's see what we get here, because all that freight that's been sitting in China is going to take about 60 days to get here in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just 90 days. It's a 90-day probation period. I am just excited for some type of reprieve, even if it just gives us the hope. We're in America. We need a fake hope. We're Americans, and you know that, Pierson. We need a fake hope, and the fake hope actually helps our economy, because the good and the bad of your economy is just the thought. That's literally what your economy is, right? So that is what is rushing us to do this. Let's buy this. Let's make sure we're shipping this. What's making sure we do this and that. And that'll get the small businesses to, get to buying and shipping and all of that fairly quickly. Now, with saying that, you were saying about everything with the Pacific. That is true. Now, the freight rates are supposed to be set to rise because of the shipping frenzy over there. So let's talk more about that. Let's get into the freight and everything there, because that'll definitely go into that article that Transport Topics wrote. So it's almost like a psychic.
Well, yeah, let's talk first about where freight was. And I'll say last week, because this is the hard part with Trump, is data 7 days later becomes very old very quick, because something new has taken place. I can tell you the spot market for the week of May 5th through May 11th was up about 0.1%. Spot trucks was down 0.3%, so almost unchanged. April, of course, saw a 3% increase versus March, 9.6% increase on trucks versus March. We've been going down for the last 4 months. So back in February, on the spot market rate for dry van, we were at 202, then 199, 196, 192. Should start to see that spike up just naturally, because as warmer weather historically takes place, you start to see people like Home Depot and Lowe's moving more freight, and there's kind of a trickle effect. So we'll see what happens there. Reefer's been holding somewhat steady the past 3 months. Flatbed's down 3 cents, but still sitting at $2.54 a mile. So there's some opportunities there that we'll have to see what happens. The freight along the U.S.-Mexican border has not been wildly impacted through all of this. If you do business along the border, you will get some flux because of our holidays versus their holidays. Tends to be a much bigger factor than what's going on a much more larger scale. Freight out of California stinks right now for most of the country. It's been soft for a while here and continues to get softer. The port in LA, if you look at the live cam that shows the port of LA and Long Beach, has looked dormant for the past 2 months. So I'm optimistic. There's some stuff that's just been sitting, waiting to come into the country. There's other stuff that will take a longer element to get there. One of the things that I hate to say this is, you and I were at the 10th Street Conference last week.
Right.
That I happened to turn on the local TV, which normally when I'm in a hotel, I don't watch TV that often anymore, because this little device here is kind of taken away the reason to watch TV. But it was interesting Toyota and Kia had ads that were going, buy a car now, your pre-tariff cars are available. I thought it was an interesting ploy to stir up some business on a car purchase. That was new. I had not experienced that, but considering that those are within the U.S. are produced mainly in the southeastern U.S., it was interesting seeing that in the western U.S. being sold of hurry up and get your pre-tariff car.
Yeah, I think that they kind of have to. I think I saw that as well when we were out there that I hadn't seen where we kind of live in the middle part of the country, being in Texas. I did start seeing more ads on my social medias about tariffs. Buy this because of tariffs, buy that because of tariffs. Mine wasn't about cars. It was more about shoes and hair and things like that. But the same ads or the same companies that I would see in Texas when I was on that algorithm, I started seeing when I was in Vegas, they were talking about wigs and shoes and makeup, but they were talking about buy with the connection with the tariffs.
Well, and you'll want to notice this a lot with food items. So, as an example, if tariffs increase food prices, it's not just from that country because this always comes down to supply versus demand. So if you see, I don't know, bananas from one country that tariffs hit them with a 45% rate, and then another country sends their bananas, but the price is higher, it's influenced by price and demand. All these countries are intertwined. So as an example, we get, where I live, we get fruit from Mexico, apples, and apples went up about 20%. Well, if we looked, we turn around and my wife noticed it too. She goes, these apples are from Washington State. Why'd these go up 20%? Well, because it's a global economy and it's supply and demand. So it's not greed. A business is ultimately trying to make profit when you can, because you still got to take a loss too. And that's the one thing. Companies can be greedy, but companies aren't being greedy. Sometimes you have to make money because that no one cries for you when you take a loss as a business. So you kind of have to take the money when you can, because you're going to have to take the losses when you do. So we saw that apples from Washington were being sold at a 20% increase than what they were literally a month ago, despite the fact that they came from Washington State. That is literally a response to the tariffs in Mexico, even though the fruit came from Washington State, is they adjust their prices to match.
I speaking of that, it was so funny. Even though my avocados do come from Mexico, literally I had to force myself. Last week, I was like, I am not buying these avocados. They cost too much. But I was like, okay, Kameel, buy the avocados, because if you don't, then you're going to buy something unhealthy and blah, blah, blah. You're going to go down this whole chain. You're going to get fat. So I did go ahead and buy the avocados, but small avocados at the grocery store are $1.75 each, not the organic. Okay. And I'm like, what is going on?
I will say companies in this type of scenario also get to learn about our buying patterns. So even though the price of eggs have dropped dramatically now that things have been replenished, you've seen prices on eggs go down pretty sharply.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people learned that they were willing to pay $5 for a dozen eggs. We went ahead, and now we've had eggs in the past, and trust me, if you've ever had chickens in the backyard and had your own eggs, those are the most expensive eggs you will ever have. When you get past the fact you got a coop, you got chickens, you got feed, all sorts of stuff. So paying $5 for a dozen eggs compared to owning your own is nothing. At one point, I think I told my wife that we're paying $23 an egg, and I'm tired of it. But with that said, the companies realize there's people out there that will gladly pay that money for the eggs. And so even though prices have gone down, that market's been tested about what the buying patterns are of customers that they're willing to pay for. And you're more likely to see egg prices go up again as companies adjust, going, the demand is there that we can charge 3 times more.
Like my mother says, when I always would say, I can't wait till certain prices go back down, and I say stuff like that, and she'll say, Kameel, that doesn't happen. I was like, what do you mean? And she'll say, there's a new chief in town. And I said, what do you mean? And she'll say, you know, I was born in the 40s. If that was the case, then cars would still cost $2,000. A house would still cost $7,000 if everything was to go back down. And I would say, oh, that's true. Once something increases, and like you say, once they realize that Jonathan is willing to pay this, then this is what it is. Because just like I said, no, I don't want to pay $1.75 for this small avocado, not even the large one. But if I don't buy this, then I'm going to buy something that's unhealthy, and that's going to make me fatter. So I might as well buy something healthy.
It's where companies adjust to buyer behavioral patterns. Ford is dealing with right now is pickup trucks have finally become out of reach of the middle class at this point. And where the average pickup truck sits on the lot for 100 days, it's now approaching 300 days, because it turns out not a lot of people can afford an $80,000 pickup truck that is not fully loaded even. And so they finally hit that precipice of, okay, we figured out where the edge is, that we can no longer acquiesce, or we can't offer the financing realistically that will be able to entice people to buy that vehicle. So we see that with a lot of that stuff. If you look, consumers spend a lot less on milk as a percentage of their grocery bill than just 15, 20 years ago. As a kid, milk was a staple part of my diet. But there's alternatives. Almond milk, though I've still not figured out how you milk the tiny little almond. There's oat milk and a whole bunch of others, and then some people that just skip breakfast altogether. And so because of that, milk has had to adjust dramatically, and you've seen the price of milk hold pretty steady for about the last 15 years, where it spiked up substantially. It is going to be interesting in the next, let's call it, year, to see where prices reset on many items that we would have looked at as being necessities that are no longer necessities. And it's funny, I had a conversation at a truck stop here, Flying J, about 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about how grocery shopping has changed and what you bought previously versus what you do. A lot more people buying store brands. So store brands, Albertsons, I think, reported that store brand sales was up almost 25% over the last year. And you see things that used to be bargain basement that would do well in a recession not doing well. McDonald's right now is in turmoil because traditionally in a recession, McDonald's stock goes up, but they've realized they've outpriced their market. They are trying to utilize their app to entice people to bargain shop through the app. But most people do not want to download an app for a fast food restaurant, because I can tell you right now that I will be judged if all of a sudden people look at my phone and see a thing pop up that I'm getting a message from McDonald's. I don't want that.
That's exactly why I will not download it. I feel like that makes me morbidly obese.
Yep. Exactly. And it's a step. It's a step. And then so McDonald's is struggling right now because they need to get in line. Because most people now at this point, if you make less than $75,000 a year, which the majority on an individual basis of Americans make less than $75,000 a year, you now view 56% of people from the data that McDonald's looked at views McDonald's now as a luxury good. That's bad for them. That is really bad for them, because if their average consumer's making more than $75,000 a year, that's a sign that they've gone off course versus their business model.
Exactly, because now people can make different buying choices. I agree with that. I say that all the time. If I can go to a fast food restaurant and pay the same amount of money or very close to it as going and sitting down in a restaurant, or pulling up and ordering that sit down and just have them come out to the car because of curbside or whatever it is, I'd rather do that because I can get better and healthier choices. And that's the reason why milk alternatives. We don't buy milk like that anymore, just alternative. We realize that you're not supposed to drink cow's milk after a certain time because we're not those type of animals. So
I love dairy. It's never consumed as milk. I love Greek yogurt. And that has gone up, and that's one of those products that it turns out I am willing to overpay for.
yes, me too. I'm willing to overpay for it.
And
exactly.
so I'm taking advantage of at HEB.
Yeah. And back to the store brand stuff, I'm starting to buy store brand apple juice. I'm buying store brand apple juice for us, store brand apple juice for my grandkids, all of that. So it's just funny because I'm like, I'll buy $3. I'm not paying $5 and $6. I can use that to buy 2 avocados.
Yeah, I will say that I think, and it's one of the things that changed over the last 15 to 20 years. Store brand was generally viewed by the general public as inferior. We have much more access to information now. We know that the store brand's normally made by one of the major retailers, so
Exactly.
that's a big difference. B, most people at the grocery store don't view it as a status symbol, where traditionally, if you bought generic or store brand, it was viewed as admitting to not being of a certain stature financially. That stigma does not exist anymore, where 20 years it was very common to have that stigma. And I think part of that probably comes from Costco. Costco had a lot of success with Kirkland Signature, especially when people realized that Kirkland Signature, they have a Kirkland Signature whiskey bourbon that's made by a major distillery up in Kentucky. Their Kirkland Signature golf balls are made by Callaway, even though they won't admit it at this point. Costco probably was the most successful brand when it came to Kirkland Signature, and the other brands subsequently have followed suit and ended up reaping the benefits of it. So yeah, I will tell you that half the products in my pantry right now are probably HEB store brand. I'm not going to pay an extra 30% because I like somebody's commercial.
Well, you know what? I like the fact that you schooled me on the bourbon. I don't know anything about golf, but I do know my way around whiskey, kind of, sort of. Not really. I just know how to pour it. So that's enough.
Like a pro. Like a pro.
I'm really, really good at that. So I will go and visit their aisle. I never even knew that they had one, but I need to be able to tell you about it.
Yeah, absolutely. How are we looking on fuel prices?
Yes, that's what I was just about to say. So
I could feel it.
Yes. So diesel. Retail diesel, as of today, I was able to pull that up. Per gallon, $3.47. That is a decrease of $2.01 from last week. So nothing really caused it.
2 cents, not $2 from last week.
Oh,
2
yeah.
cents.
What I said, $2?
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
I was about to say, what global event just happened? Oh my gosh, the sky's falling.
Yeah, the sky fell. That's for sure. So let me start over. Today, as of today, the average diesel is $3.47, and it's 2.1 cents less than it was last week. But last year, it's just 37 cents less. So it is less, but not a big deal either. Now, gas, because even though we're big diesel, because we do everything Class A, we do know that everybody DOT is not all diesel like us. Some are gas. So as of today, it's $3.16. Last week, it was $3.15. But last year, it was 50 cents higher.
Yep.
So that is still not a huge write home about either. It's not until we get into the $1 and $2 business right there. So what we want to do is go to commercial. When we come back from commercial, guys, we are going to go over the hot jobs, and Pierson has 4 hot jobs out there. But let me tell you, if I can squeeze 5 out of him, I will. But I know we have about 3 or 4. But let's go ahead and go to commercial, Terrell.
My name is Chavez Armstrong. I'm the yard coordinator. I've been with MVT for 7.5 months now. My position at MVT entails of me coordinate the yard, make sure the drivers are okay, and make sure everybody gets along well. My life before MVT was, I was driving trucks on a daily over the road, and now I'm working at MVT, and now I'm just yard coordinator, so I usually get to go home daily. A typical day at work for me would be making sure all the trailers are in the right spot. I do a yard check every day, making sure the yard looks clean, making sure my drivers are well taken care of, and being cool with my employees. The most challenging aspect of my role at MVT will have to be getting used to some of the older drivers that are here. Like I said, there's an age discrepancy with me and the different drivers, so sometimes I'm telling a 75-year-old dude to move his truck, and sometimes you just gotta know how to talk to them, have respect, and be lenient with them. My favorite part of the job would have to be coming to my coworkers. My coworkers, my drivers, everybody's cool with me. Like I said, everybody sees me every day. I'm cool with everybody. I know people's kids' names. So, if I could describe the culture and work environment at MVT, I would have to say exciting. Every day is kind of a different day. Sometimes every driver's over the road, so they come back and they're happy to be back. So everybody's happy in a good mood when they get back to the hood. I would have to say my biggest accomplishment at MVT would be setting up this yard. I really took pride in taking my time to set this yard to make it easy for me, because when we first got here, it was a struggle and drivers were parking everywhere and my job was crazy and I was outside all the time. But once I got it set up and made everything perfect, now every day runs smooth and it really seems like my job is really cake now. My motivation to get up for work every day, my why is my family and my kids. I like to get up and take care of my family. This is the way I feed my family, so it's really easy to get up, and plus my job is so welcoming. The advice I would give to employees to start at MVT is show up to work on time, be ready to work, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I would recommend people to come into MVT just because the work environment. A lot of places you go to work at, you're uncomfortable, you're unsettled, and it's not good to work in those type of environments. With MVT, you don't go through those type of things. It's very lovely here, and I would recommend anybody to come work here.
I really like that commercial. I think I say this all the time about MVT commercials, but I really like that commercial because he is just so real, and I like how he's respectful when he was talking about the older drivers, but also that is really a testament. And he wasn't even trying to do this; he was just kind of telling the truth, kind of how Josue does, but how MVT does not do the whole ageism thing. And now that I'm middle aged, I really pay attention to that. Versus 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have thought about it. But now I really pay attention to it. How MVT literally has elderly drivers, and they're really out there doing a great job. Some of the most safest drivers, dependable drivers out on the road, right? But what was I trying to say about him? But he knows how to talk to them, but MVT is still hiring the drivers. It's not like, oh, you're too old. We hear that all the time, that drivers are telling us that carriers are saying, oh, we can't hire you because of this or that, and it's regarding the age. But MVT has drivers that are 75 years old.
Yeah, it's one of the challenges of this industry, though. There's not a stereotypical driver. When I ask people outside of our industry to describe what they think a truck driver is, notoriously they will still describe Smokey and the Bandit from the 1970s, with a very young Sally Fields and Burt Reynolds. In actuality, be it race, religion, age, a number of other things, there is not a stereotypical driver, and we have drivers between 23 and 91 years old at this moment. Our average age of a driver is 48, but I can tell you that they come from all walks of life. Now, it does make it a challenge from a fleet manager standpoint. Your average fleet manager only has anywhere between 30 or 40 people on their board, which is unique because our industry has some companies where they have an 80-to-1 ratio of drivers to fleet manager. But with that said, with 30 or 40 people, those are all going to be different people. So one size does not fit all type of mentality.
Mhm.
You have to be able to effectively communicate as a fleet manager with those people, be it somebody that's 23 or somebody that's 91, and they may have very different desires on what they want from the job. So that's going to always be the challenge for a fleet manager is how do I acquiesce to those different personality types and set
Mhm.
those people up to have the same equality of opportunity for success. And so that's the thing as a fleet manager, that between fleet manager and a representation at the terminal, as you saw there, you got to have people that are good communicators. If they aren't good communicators, no fleet manager is going to be successful if they are not good at communicating with a wide swath of people that are, quite frankly, generally different than they are.
And I like how you always say that a lot of the other positions there, they have been drivers already. He had been a driver already. So when he took that position, he was able to know how the yard should be set up. How, first of all, he should be able to communicate with the driver so they can understand how he needed things to be organized.
Yep.
That was one thing. So when he's telling Jonathan, oh no, I need you to do this with your truck, he's able to communicate with them as a driver, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty on target. I like that.
Yeah, I will always point out that, look, to work within the offices, you don't need to be a former driver. In fact, we want some people that haven't been so they can have a different perspective on it because we
Right.
want to have multiple views. But boy, that's a resource we sure appreciate, and that's why we
Yeah.
focus a lot on career development, because that ability to A, empathize with our
Mm.
drivers, and then B, have a really good understanding of what they're talking about. It's one thing to get a complaint. It's another thing to understand that complaint and have the empathy to want to fix that complaint. Those things often cannot be trained. You have to have somebody that has a background in order that they can feel the problem,
Yeah,
not just see the problem.
absolutely. Yeah, I like the diversity of it all. It just speaks to why your retention is so good. That's first of
We've
all.
been very fortunate over the years that we've established a very collaborative work environment with a wide swath of people.
Yeah, collaborative. Like that word, like that word. Okay, awesome. All right, Terrell. Vanna, who you want to be? Vanna? I thought that was funny.
When we
Anyway.
do this, we need to start adding the Wheel of Fortune music in the background. But with that said, hashtag, I don't know if it's trademarked. Division 100, we have openings for 5 to 10 individuals, averaging 1450 to 1540 a week. Though I will tell you, I just recently pulled the stats for the past 5 weeks, and in the past 5 weeks, the average driver pay has actually been sitting at 1650. And that's why we have about 10 to 15 job openings for Division 100. Freight is jumping. Very nice length of haul, especially as you go to the southern Great Lakes states. 4 to 6 days out, so weekly home time. Average length of haul of 1,400 miles once you get on that first load. Actively hiring out of El Paso for this division, an exciting one. We've kind of talked about how freight has not been impacted as much along the U.S.-Mexican border as it has in California. This division's an example of it. They've been plenty busy in this division, so we're actually beating our advertised weekly averages right now for the past 5 weeks by about $90. So if that's an exciting opportunity out of El Paso, by all means, reach out to us on Division 100. Let's talk about Division 230 next. Our Southwest Regional Division had this open for a while. We continue to hire for it, but freight continues to grow on this division, averaging $1,200 to $1,400 a week, weekly home time. We are looking for drivers currently out of Phoenix, Arizona, Albuquerque, New Mexico, San Antonio, Texas, and or Laredo, Texas. Plus, not listed here, we also have openings in this division for teams either out of Phoenix or out of El Paso. So teams out of Phoenix or El Paso, solo drivers out of Phoenix, Albuquerque, San Antonio, and Laredo. The solos are averaging $1,200 to $1,400 a week. The teams are averaging $3,800 to $4,200 a week. Running the Southwest region, Electrolux, Tesla, a lot of long-term customers that have been with us at least a decade. A lot of direct customer freight. So some of the companies that are relying on broker freight, in particular off the West Coast right now, are probably not doing very well. But we have direct customer freight, and they're meeting all of their contractual obligations, which are keeping our folks busy. I believe this week we have about 7 drivers joining our company out of the Phoenix area. Probably could use another 20 more. So Phoenix has been a really good spot for us. Let's go Division 330. Division 330. Currently looking for drivers out of Laredo, San Antonio, or the DFW Metroplex, going up to the Midwest or the Tennessee Valley area. Nice opportunity here, averaging $1,400 to $1,600 a week. Good miles on this, weekly home time. Exciting opportunity. We had this division closed for about 1.5 years, but it's now back open, and we have growing opportunities as we've recently added about 2 to 3 new customers. Again, this is averaging $1,400 to $1,600 a week. Need people that would attend orientation in Laredo that live out of San Antonio, Laredo, or the DFW Metroplex. And last but not least, our fastest growing division, Division 440. Currently looking for folks that live out of Memphis, Tennessee, or Nashville, Tennessee, Houston, or DFW, Texas, as well as San Antonio. This division primarily sticks to the South Central and Southeast U.S. A lot of opportunity here, averaging about $1,200 to $1,400 a week. Geography, above all else, is what has this division being so popular. So as an example, Division 330, and I always point about how divisions pay differently depending on what you're doing. Division 330 is going to average about $200 to $300 more per week than this division, but you will see places like the outside of the Chicagoland area, a little bit more snow in that time of year, where this division keeps you further south. Going to get a lot more South Central, Southeast U.S., better weather conditions and running lanes. So it depends on what you're looking for as far as which division you would choose to run. But again, Memphis, Nashville, Houston, DFW, San Antonio, exciting opportunities with Division 440. Again, we covered about 4 positions today, but we hire out of a bunch of other positions. Salt Lake City that we didn't cover today, Jacksonville, Florida, a number of other markets. Plus, the fine folks at Rig on Wheels also work with about 40 other clients. So if we didn't talk about a market that you're interested in or that you live in, there's about 40 other options that really the teams they're going to go over. What are your wants? What are your needs? Is there another decision maker in the process that needs to join us on this phone call to find you ultimately a career path rather than just another 90-day job? So stop jumping around, going from one company to the next. Let's set up a long-term pathway for your success. Give the Rig on Wheels folks a call at 281-968-3100. That's 281-968-3100. Or visit rigonwheels.com today.
Absolutely. And like Pierson said, when you go to the Rig on Wheels website, there will be a tab that says driver application. It's the Intella app. You'll be able to fill it out, or it will auto-populate, and you just make sure that you correct everything. And one of the recruiters will definitely give you a call back either today or tomorrow. Go over everything. Now, everybody is not ready to go to MVT. Now, you need at least 6 months experience for a majority of the jobs. But let's say you're just shy of that, or your MVR or PSP is just not really ready for it yet. We will work with you with a career plan, put you at another company until you are ready, kind of get you ready to be able to go to an MVT. Okay, so definitely give us a call at 281-968-3100, 281-968-3100. So what we want to do here is we want to go to commercial and go to a commercial where it's about the driver appreciation, because the next MVT driver appreciation will be on May 22nd. We don't know if it's going to be in El Paso, Hutchinson, which is the Dallas area, if it's going to be in Laredo, Denver, or Nashville. I didn't know you all had one in Denver too.
Yep. Look
at me. I'm learning new stuff every day. I thought I knew like everything. I didn't know it was one in Denver.
You're 80% there, but yeah, we got a good team up there. They do a really nice job for us.
Oh my goodness. Okay, awesome. Look at me. I'm learning stuff new every day. But hopefully it is in the Dallas area and I can just mosey right on up the road. But I won't know. I always try to find out early, but just don't know these things. I guess I'm not high enough on the food chain. But Terrell, let's go ahead and run a appreciation commercial.
I feel very, very excited about my achievement. I'm very proud of giving to the company the legacy of the Sandoval family. I'm very proud, very excited. So you can see it on my face. So very excited.
Well, you know, it's been a big passion of ours to get fuel mileage and to be the best. And my goal was to get all the drivers wanting to do it. It'd be one thing if I have 5 drivers kind of get fuel mileage, that's great. But what's that doing for the environment? What's that doing for the company? So by creating the game where he or she with the best fuel mileage at the end of the quarter gets a car, it makes a lot of the people want to do it. So the idea is to get more and more people trying to get through. I mean, we create the best truck we can get. I make a truck that's easy rolling, less parasitic drag, very aerodynamic, and then I got to get in the head of this gentleman and the other people driving and make them want to drive it that way. Where you can drive the car easy. I always say if you treat it like it's about to break, it never will. Treat a truck like a beautiful woman, gently, caress it nice and caress it gently and make it last. Makes the truck last, makes you last. And the safety, like, and he said, patience. Patience is everything. Patience in truck driving. If you're impatient, think about it. Every time somebody pulls in front of you, which is all the time, you get all mad, you can just run into them. You got to try not to wreck with these people. You're always driving defensively, so you ease on the brake and you make sure you don't want to just slam on the brake and then slam on the gas. That kills the brakes, kills the mileage. So when they're being patient, they're slowly taking their time and staying out of the longest line and getting in the shortest line and, you know, ease around and just make yourself go gently and go. Just take care of it, and that makes you safer. It makes the tires last, makes the brakes last, makes the motor last, and makes the fuel last, and it makes the people around us last because we're not running over them. Safety.
Hey, my name is Roberto Sandoval. I am a driver trainer in this company. I have 24 years as a truck driver here in this company, and I win the 25,000 and also the trainer of the year, mentor of the year. I can't believe it right now, but I do the best always.
What do you do in order to get the best fuel mileage?
I always do, first of all, be positive. Secondly, set my objectives. And third, just do it. No matter what happens, because sometimes you cannot get a good MPGs because there is a traffic, a lot of wind, or heavy loads. But I wait for tomorrow. And don't worry, be positive no matter what happens. Just avoid be anger or I can do it. No, I can do it. I'm gonna do it. That's all we have to do. Don't give up. Never give up.
I'm so proud of Roberto and all the things he's done, and you know, it's not just his family. I forget how many people he's trained over the years, but we've had a lot of car winners and a lot of trainers that are still training here that won a car because they learned from him. They went on, they started here, they saw how he did it, they listened, they watched, and then they go win a car on their own, and then they train somebody who then wins. It just keeps getting passed down. We just keep creating better and better drivers, and a lot of it started at the top, and the top is Roberto Sandoval.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you.
Always is a pleasure to see you in this season.
It's the holiday season. What would the holiday do without Sandoval?
They're happy for this season. Sandoval is saying, yeah, there's money season.
Yeah.
But no, that's good because he's trained so many drivers, and like we'll say, it keeps getting passed down and passed down and passed down because he's a very good trainer, obviously. But what were you about to say, Pierson?
No, really good guy there. We are very fortunate between the trainers. We have a lot of good mentorship program, both in the office, the operational team, the driver base, that seems to almost gain momentum on itself more than anything else, is kind of the nice thing here. And, you know, we've talked about it a couple weeks ago with the government. It's interesting here because it reminded me, because we recently had meetings with our B1 trainers. We have mentors that we have B1 drivers. Again, we move about 500 loads a day across the U.S.-Mexican border. So on the U.S. side plus on the Mexican side, we have the B1s. And it was interesting. We got into a conversation here looking at what our exposure is as it relates to this English comprehension. And this has always been a law. It's in the FMCSA
Right.
handbook. And so we got looking at the metrics. Our safest drivers actually in the entire fleet are the B1s. So we are somewhat annoyed. We will definitely do our due diligence to look over this. Our concern is how it's going to be executed by Barney
Mhm.
Fife in some backwoods yokel town that decides he's going to say America, y'all, and decide
Right.
that he wants to test somebody. Our folks speak and comprehend English. They have to legally drive in the country. But statistically speaking, it reminded me here because I also got a note on it. Our safest drivers in terms of less accidents, both minor and major, are our B1. So it's going to be interesting seeing how this plays out because statistically, the evidence would show that there is really no reason, if you're going off stats, to go down the pathway we're going down.
I love that you bring that up. That actually makes me emotional and proud. Because in the media and social media, which basically has taken over the fake media, is the opposite. And perception happens to be reality. But yeah, they have to know English in order to get, the licenses, the permits for the B1 visas and all of that type of stuff. And yes, they go through a lot of rigor in order to be able to drive.
I will point out that most companies, beyond just the FMCSA guidelines, are heavily regulated by their insurance provider.
Yeah.
Insurance, speaking of inflation, has gone up. I think I read an industry average in the last 5 years that the average insurance for a trucking company has gone up almost 90% across the board. And so we are heavily regulated. We have a close relationship with our insurance provider that when we have written documented standards on who we hire, where we hire, what we do, we follow it to the letter. And we have to, because the consequences, not just financially, but emotionally and physically, are severe if we don't. We could
Yeah.
always improve as an industry. Let me be very clear. This
Yeah.
industry is based on improving, and we always strive to get safer and more proficient at what we do. With that said, the knee-jerk reactionary methods that a lot of politicians take feel good short term, but tend to be based off of very little evidence. I can tell you that the B1 drivers in this country are in no way, shape, or form where our greatest improvement will come as an industry. And we'll see. Most of the time, we aren't worried about being pulled into a weigh scale or a DOT officer. That's not what worries us. If anything, the DOT is quite cooperative and will guide you with what they're looking for, what's important to them, what you need to watch out for, and how you can successfully pass a pre-trip inspection, as an example, when they inspect you at the weigh scales. It's the guy off the road that does not, A, understand the equipment that he's looking at, B, does not understand the FMCSA handbook or guidelines at the DOT level, and C, decides that they want to be Barney Fife and save the day, that we're really concerned about here. But we'll see how the next 60-day plays out.
Yeah, I think that I agree that that's where the issue is going to be. And it's so many accents. And I'm not talking about foreign drivers. I'm talking about Americans that were born in America. It's so many accents all over the United States that when you are a person that is foreign coming into the United States and you're having to learn another language, the different accents, that makes it difficult. And then, first of all, when you get pulled over and things like that, that makes you nervous anyway. But then when you have to listen to somebody's accent, and when you learn a different language, you're learning it from this one accent, right?
Yep.
And then you hearing it from another accent. And I remember when Josue and Robert Wupakala was on the phone, on the podcast. And listen to me, I pronounced Wupakala wrong, right? Okay, right.
Yeah, Rubalcaba, but I called him Chewbacca for the first 6 months, so I cannot.
Right. So, but um, you know, they speak Spanish. They speak fluent Spanish. They're native Spanish speakers, Josue and Robert. However, if they were speaking to a woman that was a native speaker that was Dominican, they would not understand anything that she was saying because Dominican women speak Spanish in cursive. And
they would piecemeal it at best.
Right. So both of them were laughing because they was like, we wouldn't know what she was saying. And both of them are, all three of them are would be native speaking English folk, right? And there are plenty of people that talk to me and they're asking me, like, what are you saying? My accent, right? So if they are learned English from someone that maybe spoke to them in Washington, state of Washington, or in California, they don't know what I'm talking about, or it's going to be hard for them. So things like that.
We had one of our drivers that got pulled over last week. The cop took it upon himself to have the driver answer questions and then take out a piece of paper and write down the answers, his responsive, and write out all the answers. It is not a DOT requirement. It is not an FMCSA requirement. They need to be able to read safety signs. They need to be able to communicate. They need to be able to comprehend English. They need to be able to fill out certain reports. Right. There is no written test of a truck driver, be it U.S. born. Again, you get into cursive as an example. That would be a problem. I promise you, I'd like to think I'm proficient in the English language, but if you read my handwriting, you won't understand 60% of it. And so that's where we're concerned. We'll look at it, but as an industry, it's going to be one of our challenges here. We hope to get some light shed on us as far as new standards soon. But if we have cops that are going to do it based off of what their scale is, we might as well have thousands of different versions of what DOT requirements are, and it's a slippery slope. Think of the carriers that don't have B1s as an example, or all their drivers come from, I don't know, Kansas. All I will point out here is it's a slippery slope. When you start leaving things at the local jurisdiction level, one thing at a time, today it's about English. Tomorrow it'll be about a different topic. The next day it'll be about a different thing. And if we end up having to go off of 60,000 different laws based off of who you pull over and they get to be your judge, jury, and executioner on the spot, things are going to get ugly really quick.
What I know in my factual world, Kameel's facts, is there will never be a proficiency assessment for the truck drivers. And the reason why is the American truck drivers that were born here. I don't mean ones that got their citizenship. The American truck drivers that were born here, just like I was born here, would not be able to pass it. So why? Because there is no rule saying in order to get your CDL, you had to be promoted from the 5th grade to the 6th grade. 1. 2, there are truck drivers that learn how to drive a truck on the farm with their uncle and their grandpa, right?
Fewer now, because now you have to have an ELD certificate.
Right, yeah.
So that's a rarity,
but before, Texas, North Carolina, that just started.
Yeah, for the last 3 years. Well, it's for the last 3 they have to have it.
In Texas, we just...
No, so this is the thing. If I have to hire somebody, they have to show an ELDT in the last 3 years.
And for you to hire them. But
no,
we just got this regular Pierson. We just made it be where we have to go to school.
Oh no, but it's not a state level. It's literally at the national level. You have to have an ELDT in the last 3 years.
but we just made it be where we had to go to school in the state of Texas.
Oh yeah, but Texas's law doesn't apply because they're regulated at the federal level.
Right.
It literally doesn't
because
happen.
you know in Texas we just felt like we were our own people. But right. But what I'm trying to say
Well,
is
you don't claim half the state, so I'm just going to throw that out there. Yeah.
right, I don't claim half the state. And then I'm in Houston, we really don't have many rules anyway. But we don't follow them. But with saying that, we don't even have to, in order to get your CDL, you literally do not have to be promoted from the 5th grade.
Yep.
So with saying that, there are going to be American born and bred drivers that are not going to be able to pass a test. They're not pilots.
Yep. Hey,
so
real quick, just because I want to make sure not to give misclarity to anybody out there. The entry-level driver training ELDT requirements for trucking are designed to ensure that all new commercial drivers receive constant, high-quality instruction before obtaining a Class A or Class B CDL. The ELDT rule was implemented February 7th, 2022, and applies to drivers seeking to obtain a new hazmat, passenger, or school bus endorsement, as well as getting a CDL. So if you were before that date, you are most likely fine. If you were before February 7th, 2022, so one of the things as a driver, if you graduated since February 7th, 2022, when you go looking for a job, if you list that it was that it was after February of 2022, do not be surprised if the company asks for a copy of that ELDT. It's really easy to get. It's not hard to get. It takes like 5 minutes. It's on an online registry. Normally, your recruiter will be able to help you get it. In fact, it's even easier than the clearinghouse. And the clearinghouse has some technical difficulties around it. The ELDT should be nothing that interferes with that. But the key thing to remember is if it was after February 2022, do not be surprised if a company asks for that. They're actually required to ask you for it. And if they don't, they're going to have some issues down the line.
We just want to do shout outs. Hi to ARE Radio. They were saying hello, panel and room.
B1 first.
Oh, because you were saying the B1 visa.
Yeah, the B1s are unbelievably safe. I'll also point out our visa drivers that come from countries like Zimbabwe, South Africa, they are literally in second place when we categorize it, right behind them in terms of safest drivers.
Yeah. All of this stuff is true. And then Terrell, go back to the one that said One Love Family so you can read off the names.
Avenge of the Ancestors. I love that name. That is fantastic.
I wonder if he's a gamer as well. And then the last one, praising the Most High. Awesome. But yeah, definitely, I would agree. I'm very happy that we had this conversation, and we're going to see how things pan out, Pierson. That is for sure. And
we have a lot of change. That's what's taking place right now. We have a lot of change happening very quick. You know, this industry will never get figured out. We're highly regulated. And as, you know, we got into the deep conversation, here last week about the autonomous truck between DFW and Houston. The driver ain't going away. And what happens once we implement more autonomy or AI into the trucking industry is we will become more dependent on the truck driver, not less. That is going to be the big thing of it. So if you're outside of our industry, appreciate the drivers. You're going to need them more than ever.
And we're going to become more dependent on the safe drivers. Let's talk about that. The safe drivers are the ones that are going to be in the game.
Yep.
So kept in the game. It's an analogy I'm trying to say, but I don't know what it is. So, you know,
We got the gist. Stick to 2 and 2 and we'll be good.
Yeah, just 2 and 2. Yeah, I just go back to the 80s or 70s. But we are at the bottom and the top of the hour, something like baseball. And we will see you guys next week at this same time, Tuesday, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. We want you to be very, very safe and be cool. I mean, we are having a heat wave. That is for sure, and it's hell on wheels now.
I'm in a rainy Nashville right now, but I'll get to experience it tomorrow morning.
Oh yeah, it's we're gonna be 95 degrees without the heat index all this week here.
Yeah, for those of you that haven't been to Houston, you'll love the humidity.
Yeah, yes. Just make sure that when you have your makeup on, you have your setting spray, because it'll be on your clothes. But you don't have to worry about that. Pierson, you don't wear makeup. So next lifetime for Pierson with that. But anyway, we'll see you guys next week. Be safe.